Welcome to this Wednesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. We're supposed to be joined today by Scotty M, but I just got a message from him that he had a little emergency pop up. So we'll take you to the wire here. The wire. We're always hoping for the wire in horse racing. And hopefully you guys are having some luck. I went contrarian yesterday. Went against my man Mike Jones, who had used this theory very successfully in betting Major League Baseball about teams that were coming off long road trips and betting against them in their first game back at home. We had a situation that occurred that fit that circumstance here in town in South Florida, where we originate the program from, with the now red hot Miami Marlins. They are hot, hot, hot. They haven't been this hot in a long, long time. We had labeled their general manager, Peter Bendix, thinking that of all the people that we could have snared from the front office of the ingeniously run Tampa Bay Rays organization, a franchise that is destitute, that has no money, no stadium. They're playing at the Yankees spring training facility this year. And before that, they were in a place that we had labeled the Blunder Dome because the city of St. Petersburg got snookered into building a stadium when they had no team. And then a couple of teams shined them on there. They had this big facility. It turned out to be a total brick of a ballpark in many senses, including one of those weird things where, remember, you used to have special rules. I grew up on the streets of Brooklyn playing ball, punch ball, stick ball. It was mostly punch ball. And you had oddly configured stadiums and or places where you played, where the bank parking lot came into play, and you had to worry about some wiring. And this ballpark in St. Petersburg that the Rays played in actually had like a girder that would be in play. I think if the ball hit the girder and came straight down, which it often did, it was actually considered to be in play, which seemed like a really ridiculous rule. But nonetheless, I mean, these are the kind of circumstances that they were toiling under, and yet they would find themselves, and they never won a world championship, went to the World Series there and made some serious blunders, pulling Blake Snell, of course, after he had given up one dribbler of a base hit when he was dominating and having a dominating performance in a World Series game. Cash, the manager of the team, should have been fired on the spot. Yeah, you thought for that. But they always had great front office people, and they were doing it with front office ingenuity, one of our favorite things. Naturally, teams that had money started thinking, hey, we got to get this guy over here. The Dodgers snared the man who orchestrated much of their success over a period of time. And this guy, Peter Bendix, was cast into a position of at least being a high-ranking assistant to whoever was running the show. The Marlins take a shot. They get this guy, and we thought, what job did he hold with the Rays? Because the way the franchise was running, you would have thought that he was nothing more than a bat boy. We thought that these were young major league bag ladies that they were putting out there on the field. And lo and behold, they rattle off a winning road trip. They now won 8 in a row. Well, Mike, at the time that they had 7 wins on Monday, told us, oh, well, okay, they're going to play the Twins in their home opener of the series on Tuesday. That was last night. And so he was saying, with that theory that he's been applying all season long with a lot of success, let me go ahead and bet on the Twins. Now, I look up the odds yesterday as we were doing a show, and the Marlins are actually underdogs at home in that game on the throes of a 7-game winning streak, where they are establishing records for run production, extra base hits, and margin of victory, and putting up double digits, it seems like, in every ball game. In terms of runs, they have a decent young pitching staff, just been hampered by health injuries so badly that you really don't know who can you trust. And sure enough, pitching matchup was not overwhelmingly in favor of the Twins, although they had a good guy out there. And you're getting plus 122 with a team that just won 7 in a row. They made it 8 last night. We went against Mike Jones' theory about betting against the team that's returning home. He also, I guess, took one on the chin with that theory with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who had just swept the Mets and now have a winning streak going of their own. They had Paul Skeens on the mound last night, and Skeens usually, last year he was money in the bank in his rookie season. He was routinely, they were winning every game that he performed in. Not record-wise, it's not being reflected this year, but he has been just outrageous in his last 10 starts, and I think he has nothing to show for it in terms of wins. Might have won one of those ball games, But the Pirates ended up also putting a dart, a knife in the back of that theory of Mike's as they won on their return home. So there were a couple of opportunities there to make a score going as a contrarian against our own handicapping theory, which we thought to this point in the season has been relatively brilliant. And hopefully you guys were able to cash in on that. But we were right about that Marlins game. They prevailed 2-0. And at plus 122 seemed like a pretty good play, especially now that we know the results. It's always good post-race handicapping. And they ended up making a score for us here on the show. We did talk a lot, extensively, about upsets at Wimbledon and trying to find a way to spot them. I don't know that we ever could have conceived of the magnitude and or the number, especially on the women's side, top seeds getting knocked out at big prices. And we do feel your pain if you happen to be one of those people that's inclined to lay 1,100 to win 100, which you would have to think might be time to check in and see if your psychiatrist is free, because they sit you down on the couch. You say, hey, you know what? I'm going to lay 1,100 with Jessica Pegula today in her opening round match at Wimbledon to win $100. And you would think immediately the guy dials up his cell phone and says, Bellevue, come pick him up. But there were any number of these type of upsets, including our girl, Coco Gauff, out of Delray Beach, Florida. And she goes down in the first round, coming off her win in the French Open. Was that a little French Open euphoria? I don't know. Pegula had just won a tournament on the grass, making you think that she was going to be at least a live contender, maybe not to win it all, but to get to the quarters, the semifinals. She's KO'd in the first round by Yastremska, the Ukrainian, who, it was Coco lost to Yastremska, the Ukrainian, who had some credentials. It wasn't as if that was as far-fetched of an upset as Jessica's was, where she lost to the number 117 ranked player in the world. So some monumental stuff there. Zhang, the Chinese woman who has had great success and has some big wins, has beaten Sabalenka and others, and has been very prominent. Meteoric rise over the last 12 months on the women's tennis circuit. She goes out in the first round. And then we do have to make the confession, because we were trying to look away from the favorites. We know there's no romance in betting favorites, chalk. People look very disparagingly upon you when you say, hey, look at that, I had the favorite, which sometimes can be a useful thing. As we talked about in horse racing, only one horse can win the race. And if the horse happens to be 3-5, maybe you're not going to go out and put $1,000 on it to win 600. But especially with these exotic sequences that now go horizontally as well as vertically, right? Horizontally as well as vertically. Pick threes, pick fours, pick fives, pick sixes. You have to know how to use those kind of favorites in horse racing, and not be afraid once in a while to embrace the fact that there is going to be no upset here. This horse, when you're talking Torpedo Anna, or one of those horses of that caliber, just ran and went off at 3-5 herself. Sometimes, and when you saw the horse come out on the track, even though the odds were 3-5, they could have been 1-9, and you could have just already guaranteed that there was going to be a winner there. But you have to know how to use those favorites fortuitously for your advantage, singling them in races where there's just no other contender that you can even conceive of. And if you do that, I don't know that people can be as insulting. But when you tell them, oh, yeah, they see you cheering, hey, come on with this horse, come on with this. And then everybody looks at you and goes, yeah, he's 3-5. What kind of chalk-playing loser are you? Don't be insulted by that, as if you're making money. Now, if you're doing it all the time, you're probably going to be losing your ass. But if you're making money and you have that horse in a sequence, sometimes you have to learn to use the favorite in those spots. We did mention, too, that yesterday we were talking about this kind of a funny circumstance where you would have been dead wrong in your handicapping if you thought that Jessica Pegula was going to beat this young Italian girl and do it handily in straight sets and probably not allow her to win more than a couple of games. That you would have scored on the under number of games was 19 and a hook in that particular matchup. And you would have scored on the under even though you were dead wrong. My favorite handicapping circumstance, where you're completely outrageously way off in your theory about what was going to happen, and you still end up winning a bet. So you might have been able to bail out on that, but certainly that was an upset of monumental proportions. And if you cashed on the under in that, because the other girl actually was the one that dominated, young lady was dominating, then good. Then you're having a lot of good luck. So that brings us to today, and we're getting into all of the July 4th festivities. There should be a lot of action. I came across something that I didn't know. I mean, with this prop betting, it's expanded so much. Here's one for you that I came across that you would have to think comes under the heading of being a veritable cinch. Although it's called gambling, not winning. So, and I wouldn't even, I don't know if you can find somebody that'll even take this bet, but I did see a prop bet on the upcoming John Deere Classic that gets underway tomorrow. The John Deere Classic, somewhat of a prelude to, it's not really indicative of what might happen in the Open. Many of the top players have decided to skip this particular tournament. You're not seeing Scotty Scheffler in there. You're not seeing Rory McIlroy. I don't think Morikawa is in the field because the favorite is Ben Griffin, who's been playing very well and has made a very representative showing a few times this year and is capable, obviously, of winning. He's favored in the John Deere Classic at plus 1,600. So you're getting a pretty good price, even if you're betting the chalk in this one. And there would be reason to believe that Griffin deserves the favorite's role. There are others that certainly would have to come under consideration. Let's face it. Golf, pretty much a wide open proposition. If you looked at the tournament last week, you needed a Berlitz course to pronounce the names of the guys that were eventually in the 6-hole playoff that took place that decided the winner. And I would think that I don't even know if these guys were. You could have made up a number on either of those two guys to win, and ended up being a first-time champion, a 20-year-old out of South Africa that won the tournament. So Griffin at 16-1, it doesn't. I mean, it's not as frightening of an idea as betting Scotty Scheffler even is at 2 or 3-1 in one of these tournaments. But here's the bet that struck me, and I don't know how you guys feel about making a maneuver like this. You can actually bet on who's going to be the top highest German-born or German citizenship player in the field. Who's going to come out on top? Now, you're thinking, how many Germans are there in the field? It turns out there are only 3. You're getting Steven Yeager at plus 110. Steven Yeager would have to be the most accomplished because I never heard of the other two guys. Jeremy Paul, who's missed 9 cuts in a row, is a German in the field. And the only other German in the field is Thomas Rosenmuller, who I think his best finish of late was a tie for 51st in an inconsequential tournament. I don't think this was in the U.S. Open or the PGA or any of those big events. So you're getting plus 110. You're actually getting a chance to get a small bit of a price if Steven Yeager can beat those two guys. Now that I've said that, you have to think that somehow Paul is going to snap out of it. I would give Tommy Paul, the tennis player, a better chance of doing something after this guy's missed 9 straight cuts. But Steven Yeager is a plus 110 to beat the other 2 Germans in the field. Like I said, I don't know. You might be hard-pressed to find somebody that was going to be taking that action. But if you can, it certainly looks like something that you can embrace with some level of confidence. And then your interest in watching the tournament is completely misdirected in the area of, okay, how the Germans doing here in the John Deere Classic? But that's, I mean, if you can make that bet and you're looking at only having to beat 2 guys, and you're doing it with a guy that's actually got some representative results versus 2 guys that can't seem to find their way to the 3rd round of the tournament, seems like something that you might want to take a look at. Although, hard to recommend it. And like I said, you may have to. I call my buddy Louis Lipschitz, who's been booking my action forever. He's also my divorce attorney. And he hung up the phone. He said, yeah, I'm not taking that divorce. But plus 110, Steven Yeager to beat the other 2 Germans in the field, Jeremy Paul and Thomas Rosenmuller. And it's hard to believe that you could ever find a day in your life as a degenerate gambler since as far back as I can remember that you would be making a recommendation like that on your gambling podcast. All right, a lot of interesting stuff on tap. There's more action at Wimbledon. We did mention that Taylor Fritz was down 2 sets. That probably would have been the time to unload on him in the Wimbledon tournament, first round action. It was on the first day. They had to carry over the match due to a curfew to a second day when it was tied at 2-2. This Frenchman Paracord, who serves the ball up at 150 miles an hour, blew a 2-set-to-nothing lead. That plays into our theory of wait until the team or the guy that should be favored or is in there with a chance is hopelessly down, as was the case with Fritz after he lost that second set. And then that would be the time to go ahead and unload. I don't know what the price was after he lost the second set, but he roared back. He won the next 2 sets, I believe both in tiebreakers. Then they stopped the match and it carried over the next day, and you had to think that Paracord was going down after blowing all that momentum he had. And even in the third set, he had a chance to put a point away at the net where he botched a volley. Didn't seem like all that difficult of a volley. He lets the ball dip below the net, pops it up in the air, it goes out, and that would have given him a 6-3 lead in the third set tiebreaker. So you had to think that he had an excellent chance to go on from there and take Fritz out in straight sets, but instead he survives. That always seems to happen, where the guy with the experience, the better guy, somehow finds a way to stay alive and scratches their way back into a match like that, and gives you an opportunity to maybe make a score. Betting against what would become the favorite in Paracord by heavy odds to go ahead and win the match, and you go ahead, take a shot on the guy that's down 2 sets, and the next thing you know, you found yourself in a winner's circle as Fritz came back the next day and won 6-4. We do have to make a bold admission here. We were searching no romance in betting the chalk, as we often talk about. We were trying to stay away from betting Alcaraz, who nearly got knocked out in the first round by Fabio Fognini, the soon-to-be retired Italian player. I think he was playing in his last Wimbledon. Fognini, one of those tricky cats that can give you a tough time no matter who you are. You just don't know what kind of mood he's in and whether or not he's going to be one of those guys that just emotionally beats himself up enough that he takes himself out of contention. I think you could have made a pretty good score if you thought that match was going to go 5 sets. It did, to open up the tournament. But Alcaraz, a heavy favorite to win Wimbledon. And also in conjunction, slightly lower odds than you were getting on Jannik Sinner. And the assumption is that one of those two guys is probably going to win every slam into the very distant future. That doesn't necessarily dictate that they're going to have the same success on the grass that they've had on other surfaces, although Alcaraz has won Wimbledon, and Sinner certainly would seem like a viable possibility to win this year. So we were trying to look elsewhere, and sometimes one of the things that we subscribe to is don't get cute. Don't get cute. And I did. I apologize for this because this guy's results have been suspect. It doesn't appear to be in a championship winning mode, but I gave you Alexander Zverev at 24-1 as a viable possibility. And you guys can go ahead and any disparaging things you want to say are certainly applicable, because after also being in a dead heat, he won the second set tiebreaker, Zverev, to even up his match with this British guy who is often tough out and has scored some upsets. And he evens up the match. They had to suspend it. He comes back and ends up going to a fifth set. And Zverev is knocked out in the first round. So there's your brilliant tennis analysis on my part. I give you a guy trying to beat the odds at 24-1, and he doesn't even make it to the second round of the tournament, never mind the second week. All right, a lot of stuff to look forward to over the July 4th weekend. We'll get into it tomorrow. And Mike Jones will be joining us, hopefully to redeem himself on some of his baseball picks, because his theory got blown twice in the course of a few hours last night, with both Pittsburgh and the Marlins winning. The Marlins tonight against the Minnesota Twins, trying to accomplish something that has only happened. Their franchise record for consecutive wins for a winning streak is 9. So after being in existence 32, 33 years, they have a chance to accomplish something with this bunch of what we labeled as bag ladies that has only been accomplished once before. I believe once before in Marlins franchise history, and that is to win 9 in a row. So do we continue to ride that train? We shall see. But Marlins looking after we had written them off, now we're in third place ahead of the Atlanta Braves in the National League East, which is another race that has taken on some changes with the Mets fading into oblivion and the Phillies now opening up 2 games. The Marlins with a chance, though, to tie their franchise record for consecutive wins with 9 tonight against the Twins. That's something we're going to zero in on. Don't know that I want to make a recommendation in that game, but if you're riding the hot hand, don't get cute. And we'll see if they can make that accomplishment tonight with a team that looked like it was just totally bereft of any chance of doing anything significant this year on the Major League Baseball scene. All right, thanks so much for being with us. We will have Mike Jones with us tomorrow. Won't be with you on Friday or Monday. So wishing you luck with all of your wagers out there. Sorry that we buried you with Zverev, but we did recommend you look into some upsets and the women's side of things has been just a total bomb in terms of favorites prevailing, as you've had 3 now of the top seeds. I think Zhang might have been the 6th seed. So you had the 2 and 3 seed knocked out of the tournament already with Pagula and Coco Gauff. And just continue to do your research and peruse upset possibilities at Wimbledon. And I think you guys will have a pile of cash to spend on your 4th of July celebration. All right, thanks for being with us. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Jeff DeForest, and we'll join you again on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.